welcome to Raw TV, Real and Willing Television. I'm Corey Levitt.
And I'm Andrew Harley. Now, the title of tonight's show is Marriage Happily Ever After?
Now, that seemed like a question, and you didn't miss that. It used to be a statement, but today in our society, happily ever after is not such a sure thing. So we want to clear up any misconceptions that young people have about marriage, and so we brought on an expert couple, Bob and Sue Shaner, and they're going to talk to us about how we can align our expectations with reality.
Here at Raw TV, we want you guys to know that we view marriage as a very, very beautiful thing. We view it as something that people can have, and that it's supposed to be a lifelong relationship. But there's so many different views in the world today about what marriage is and is not supposed to be. So tonight, we're going to clear a lot of those up. But before we get to that, we have a wonderful young married couple that's going to play some of their soul grass music for us. So give it out for Ginny and Tyler.
You gave up your one-eyed cat. Still makes you sad, but I'm allergic.
You gave up trips to the beach. Used to go every week to get some surfing.
You cut back on a daily routine of chocolate ice cream and 3 French presses.
You gave up playing solo gigs to sing with me. We sound much better.
I didn't mind much giving it up, 'cause I got even more of you. Honey, no, I meant it when I said I do. Long as I'm alive, I fancy you. And our love may not look much like Hollywood's, but I love you with all my heart. So I love you with all my heart.
You gave me a diamond ring on your knee in a puddle.
You gave me your hand and trust, your very love, and that was crazy.
You gave me your confidence of faithfulness when we're old and wrinkled.
You gave me a kiss and a smile. Yes, I will be yours. So I'll never mind much giving you my love, 'cause I'll get even more of you. Honey, no, I meant it when I said I do. Long as I'm alive, I'll fancy you. And our love may not look much like Hollywood's, but I love you with all my heart. Yes, I will love you with all my heart.
You said I do, so I gave you my heart. And I'll stand by you until death says we part.
Honey, no, I meant it when I said I do. Long as I'm alive, I'm gonna fancy you. And our love may not look much like Hollywood's, but I love you with all my heart. Honey, no, I meant it when I said I do. Long as I'm alive, I'll fancy you. And our love may not look much like Hollywood's, but I love you with all my heart. Bye. yes, I will love you with all my heart. So I'll never mind much giving you my love. I'll get even more of you.
I hope you enjoyed the music of Jenny and Tyler. You're going to be hearing a lot more of them later on the show. So, but right now on the couch to talk about marriage is Bob and Sue Shaner. So, guys, welcome so much to Raw
Welcome to
TV.
the show.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
I think probably the first question that our audience needs to, hear the answer to is, how did you meet and what is your love story? 33 years ago.
Let's
What's
kick
the
it off
story
with a
there?
love story.
Well, 34 years ago,
34, okay.
we met in Texas on the Mexican border. We were both serving in the Air Force at that time. She was from a small town in Indiana called Chesterton. I was from a bigger town in Michigan called Detroit. And we started dating, but it wasn't going to be anything real serious because I already had orders to move away to Omaha, Nebraska, and another assignment in the military. So we just kind of hung out for a while. But that hanging out got a little more serious. I moved away, and we kind of long-term dated. Well, not long-term, long distance. About 1,000 miles apart for about 9 months. By phone, we saw each other, what, how many times?
Probably 3.
3 times maybe
tough.
during that 9 months. And wound up getting married. I proposed to her very romantically over the phone because that's the only means I had at that point in time. And she accepted, and we actually got married twice. It was so fun the first time, we got married twice.
Wow.
There's a story to that too, but
We probably don't have time for that one, huh? Well, you were telling us actually, before the show that you two were not Christians before you got married, that you didn't meet the Lord until about 1.5 years in. So how did that happen and how has that affected your marriage?
Oh, it's greatly affected our marriage. I don't think we would be married now if we had not come to know Christ. Mainly because we didn't know each other very well. We were really virtual strangers. We dated for 4 months. Well, actually, we dated for 3 months. They got married 9 months later. A year to the day of the first time we went out, we got married. So we were virtual strangers, really. We had enough in common that it was very exciting, but once you get married and start living with that person, I did not know all that stuff. So we'd been married about 1.5 years. It was really great. I was a dental hygienist in the Air Force, and the clinic I worked at on the Air Force Base in Nebraska was very large. And I worked with probably 7 or 8 really born-again Christians. They didn't just say they were Christians, they really were Christians. They would actually talk about their faith, and I had never been around anything like that. And they were pretty regularly inviting me to church, and I would always say, oh yeah, and then I would never go. But they never got mad at me. They never treated me like, oh, I'm such a loser because I would say one thing and do another. And one Sunday, Bob was at work, and at this point, we were married 1.5 years, and we had a 6-month-old child.
Oh,
okay?
wow.
We got married in August, had a child the next August, and had another child the next August. Okay, so August
Busy
is
few
very,
years.
August
You
is
had
very
fun
big
doing
for
it.
us. So 6-month-old child, and one Sunday he's at work, and I just went to the church they had invited me to, and just stunned, floored by what was going on there, because it wasn't like anything I had ever experienced before. So I quickly went home, and he called me from work, and I'm telling him all about it. Bob, it was really great. It was a really neat service. I felt like crying the whole time, and which is not your typical response that the husband wants to hear. And I really have to appreciate Bob. This shows you God was working in our life way before we knew it. Rather than saying, usually at that point, I think most husbands would say, you're not going back there. That sounds really wacky. You felt like crying the whole time. He said, you know what, I'll just check it out with you. And so we went back
That's
the
cool,
next
Bob.
week.
February
Thumbs up.
18th, 1979, both of us gave our hearts to the Lord the same day.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so it changed our life. When we first got married, we were like going in directions like that because we're at the grocery store together, I'm putting stuff in the cart, he's taking stuff out. Because when you first get married, you go to the grocery store together.
Yeah.
I'm putting it in,
Briefly.
he's taking it out. I think money's for spending, he thinks it's for saving. Morning person, can't wait to get up in the morning and hear the birds sing. And I am like at 1 o'clock and midnight, I'm just coming alive, you know. So we were two different people going in these directions. So coming to Christ really brought that together.
That's good. That's really
So-
good. Now, both of you work on staff at Southeastern University in the Student Life Department, working with students. So, you know, we want to know, what are you guys doing to help prepare young couples for marriage
A lot of
here
people
on
get
campus?
married from here, so you have your
Sure.
hands
Noticed that.
full. Yeah, I'm one of
happens.
them. I'm a
Yeah, it
statistic.
happens.
So. What do you do?
Well, I think one very primary way is just modeling what a marriage is. Oftentimes students will see us walking around campus holding hands. And in the course of that walk, we'll talk to students. Sue, as an RD, oversees a team of 6 RAs, and I live in a dorm with 260 girls. So we're always having interaction with students, just talking about dating relationships and marriage and those kinds of things. Some students come from great marriages and great families, others not so great. And they have a lot of questions and a lot of experiences that they want to know more about. So that's one way that we do it. And then we have we actually in a couple of weeks have a couples retreat that we are speaking at, that Ray Allen and Alan Galindez and a couple of the
Some other
members-
RDs.
Yes, they've put together, and they've asked us to be part of that. It'll be our second time to just be around. I think it's 14 couples this time. I think are going to be
And these
there.
are dating couples who are
Dating
thinking
couples,
about
they're
getting
not
married.
Not even engaged, I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the purpose of a retreat like that? How do you let them know whether they should be getting married or not? Is there a process where you kind of...
This is really funny because at some point during the retreat, Alan Galindez will look at all the couples and say, "We're here to break you up." And because the feeling kind of is, you know what, if the activities you're involved in at this retreat, if that really causes a lot of friction between you and
You
a
need to
lot
really
of
be
arguments,
examining
yeah,
yourself.
you need to really relook at things.
So a lot of it is just helping them to look at some issues maybe they haven't thought about because they've been so in love over the last 30 days that they've had this really deep relationship.
So what are the misconceptions that young couples have about marriage? What do we get wrong? Where are our expectations not lining up with reality?
Oh gosh, I think a lot of it just stems from the programs that young people are watching today. It's whether it's reality TV or just some of the sitcoms that are on, the stuff that they're feeding themselves, or the books they're reading. You know, girls, especially with those romance novels or the TV shows that are all
those
Might as well
romancy.
be, yeah.
Yeah, it's very misleading because that's not real life. And I think you get that into your mind and you think, he's going to be so romantic. He's going to be just like that guy I saw on TV. And generally, the guy doesn't watch those shows, okay?
No,
So he
we
has
don't.
no clue
No, we
that's what
don't.
you're thinking is going to happen. And he's not living up to those expectations. And then you're really disappointed that, why is he not this romantic? Or how come the fireworks aren't going off as soon as he walks through the door? Or those kind of
The
things.
cue, the music.
Yes, why isn't he renting a hot air balloon for our first date? You know, those kind of things that are just reality TV is very unrealistic.
Very true. Well, we're going to come back with more of that. But right now, we're going to check out a segment called For or Against, and we're going to get people's opinions on whether they are for or against short courtships.
I would say it depends on the couple. It depends on their maturity, their knowledge of each other, and their mentors. But like my parents met each other, got engaged after like 6 months, and they've had 12 kids, and they've been married for like 35 years or something like that.
I'm for short courtships. I believe that you can find the one, and you shouldn't rush into things. But if you know and God has spoke to you, once you get the confirmation from God, I don't see a point in waiting longer than a year.
I'm totally against them. I mean, I think it's just absolutely bizarre, just thinking that you can spend the rest of your life with somebody just after a short while. Because after all, you have so much life to live, and you have so little time to do it. And why throw your life away? Because once you get married, everybody knows that it's just your life kind of plateaus.
So against it. I feel like in order to get married or so, to live a long life or a relationship with someone, you're gonna have to get to know them a very long time.
In my opinion, I think that that once you meet the person that God has intended for you to be with, that you should sit down and decide what is comfortable for both of you as far as courtship and engagement goes. In my opinion, once I meet the person that I want to be married with, I would probably suggest a short courtship just because I'm so excited to be married and to start our lives together, and I don't want there to be any room for temptation.
And let me go ahead and get your take on, the length of a courtship, the length of knowing someone before you get married. What do you think is a general rule of thumb to follow?
I don't think there is one. I think every couple's going to be a little bit different. I think a key thing to consider is your family. If your parents are not for it, unless your parents really are psycho, I think you're making a big mistake. If your parents are discouraging you from whether it's waiting 3 months or 6 months or a year.
They know.
And they really have your best interest at heart. So I think that's a real key issue because you're going to have family the rest of your life, and to have you're going to need their support. So if your parents are not, you need to listen to their wisdom, I think. So I don't know what your opinion would be on that.
Well, I think it is very individual. Everybody's at a different level of maturity. We're not the same people we were, obviously, when we first started dating when we were 20 years old. And I think there can be a big difference between a 20, 21-year-old couple looking at getting married and a 25 or 30-year-old couple that are looking at getting married. You have a certain level of maturity about you that can make that transition into marriage perhaps less challenging.
That makes a lot of sense. What would y'all say, just when we're talking about marriage, what is the purpose of marriage, like at its core? Let's establish what y'all think about that before we move on.
Well, as I understand it from Scripture, and I really believe it to be true in our lives, is that marriage makes me complete. I've learned I read the Scriptures every single day, I pray every single day, but I cannot tell you how much I've learned about the Lord's heart and His nature through Sue, and through having children, too. But she has made me complete. I've got a lot of rough edges and still have some issues that I'm progressing through. And having her as a mate and as a companion has really caused me to grow up and to mature and to be a more fully developed man of God, which I don't think I would have being single all the days of my life. Plus, I'm a lot happier, so that's a benefit of marriage, yes.
What would you say the key is to making a marriage last? Because we see all around us every day, it's just not working for so many people. What should we do to make sure it'll endure?
Well, forgiveness is probably the hardest thing, but the most common thing that you're going to be involved in. You have to be able to forgive. Sometimes it's a verbal, I forgive you. Sometimes it's all in your head. All right, I'm going to forgive that. I'm just going to let it go. I'm not taking that any further. He didn't even know he did it, which is a whole other issue.
Are you saying I've made a mistake somewhere?
For me, though, I think that's one of the key is forgiveness, being able to give the kind of forgiveness that you want, and Jesus is really our example on that.
And for me, I think a lot of it is going into the relationship, the engagement, the marriage, wanting to give yourself as wholly and completely, and being as strong and emotionally, spiritually mature as you can be, and giving yourself to the other person. To me, the attitude of going in to serve and to build the other person up, not so much what I can get out of marriage, but what can I give? What do I bring? And not so much I hope she turns out to be this, or she can give me that, or she can please me in this fashion, but what can I give? And I don't have the greatest expectations. I really don't. And whatever the Lord blesses me with through her is absolutely a bonus. And I really mean that. So keeping my eyes on Christ and knowing that I'm to love her unconditionally, to me, makes it extremely satisfying.
Did premarital counseling or anything like that, well, obviously in your case, but do you see that you didn't do premarital counseling?
Not much,
but
no.
Would it help couples to kind of go through a process where they're saying, okay, these are the attitudes I need to have, this is how I need to prepare myself? Would you agree that that's important?
Oh, absolutely.
I think you're extremely foolish not to get all the help you can beforehand. And I wouldn't even wait till premarital. Or pre-engagement. I would be talking to other couples when you're in a serious relationship as it progresses along. There's so many great couples here on campus and wherever people go to church. And most couples are willing to talk to you about their lives. They'll tell you, they'll be upfront and honest with you about the things they struggle with. Even couples that don't have a healthy marriage will be willing to tell you, this is what we did wrong, this is what we're doing wrong, we're trying to change it, but it's really hard. So it's very foolish not to get advice. You know, I think of all the other things we do that you get advice on, whether it's buying a computer or a car. You'll research it and ask all kinds of people about it. And then sometimes we keep our relationship so private and we just really hurt ourselves doing that. So yeah, premarital counseling, but even before that, dating counseling I think you need.
Daily counseling.
Anything that helps, you know, the couples out. Well, Bob and Sue, we just jumped all around and just drilled you with questions, and you were so great with handling all of them very, very well. So we are going to go to a Q&A. We have questions from the audience.
Sure. I'm going to start. This is one that is very interesting, and I recently experienced myself. How can couples make the transition from sex being completely off limits in a dating relationship to, you know, just the very next day it being okay? How do you prepare your heart and your mind? Any takers?
Well, I find that very refreshing, and I hope that is reality, that couples really are waiting. Okay, honestly, you know, if that's, I think that would be a wonderful problem to have. I think, just girls that I talk to, I tell them, okay, don't build up, the day you get married, that first night, don't build that up into being, oh, because you're going to be exhausted. If you do not seal the deal the day you get married that night, that's not a big deal. You're exhausted, sometimes you're not comfortable, you've had a long day, those kind of things. To let the natural progression take place.
You have the rest of your life.
You have the rest of your life, and it needs to just be natural. And just, if there was temptation before, there's certainly everything's gonna kick in after, okay? But I think that first, the honeymoon night, you're under a lot of pressure. I think that you can really be misled on that.
And I think to add to that, if you feel comfortable enough to make a commitment to marriage, hopefully you get a certain level of communication. You need to talk about it. You talk about
that's good.
Yes,
whatever insecurities you have. You need to talk about what pleases you. You need to talk about any inhibitions or questions. And obviously, you don't wait till your marriage night to talk about some of those things. And another key, as Sue already talked about, I think you need to have a mentoring couple, okay? Your finances, your sexuality, and so many other areas. That first year of marriage, your physical relationship it's a big transition, all right? And your sexuality, blessed of God, is to be a wonderful part and component of a healthy marriage. And to me, it's a shame, husbands and wives who don't find that a very fulfilling, rewarding, pleasurable, mutually satisfying part of their marriage. And it shouldn't be a struggle. So communicate, have a mentor, talk as to others as much as you can, and again, learn to serve one another.
All right, well, our other question from the audience was, what are some things that newlyweds do that may sabotage their marriage early on?
Well, you know how I talked earlier about your parents need to give their blessing? You also need to leave and cleave. Once you have sealed the deal like that, you can't run home to mom and dad. I think one of the reasons our marriage succeeded early on was we lived 500 miles away from our families. And so there was no running home. There was no going home. There was, we got to work this out.
Because that was your new home.
Yes, you have to leave and cleave. And I think parents have to be able to be firm and say, listen,
Go deal with it.
Go home. Dads have to say to their daughter, go home. You're not going to spend another night in this house. You're married now. You know, to have that talk before. And that's a hard thing to do because your heart always goes to your child. You think, oh, that person probably did the wrong thing, and yes, I'll take my baby angel in, but that will decimate a marriage. So that's one thing. Or yakety yak to your parents or your close friends about the disagreement that you had. Because you go on, you share the disagreement, that person picks up an offense, and they don't realize a week later, oh, you guys made up the next day and everything's fine, and they're still thinking your spouse is an idiot. So just being careful with things like
loyal.
that. That's, yes, that's really, you can dig a black hole with that.
dealing with conflict. You're going to have issues. You're going to have challenges. You're going to have pressure and demands. And if you fail to process those along the way, small things and large things, they become, and you suppress them, eventually it'll build up. And couples wind up divorcing because they get all this pent-up frustration, unmet needs, expectations, and conflicts that were never dealt with.
All right. Well, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for your wisdom.
Oh,
Thank you
you're
for
welcome.
your advice. After 33 years, you have a lot to share with us younger people.
Absolutely.
So, and I can take a lot of that into my own marriage, only having been married a year. So, well, this has been a wonderful show. We hope that you have learned a lot about marriage and about how to align your expectations with reality and to make sure that you are properly aligning your heart for this kind of commitment.
Marriage is the kind of thing, like we said from the beginning, it's a beautiful thing. Get help. I mean, just like they said, I mean, find a premarital counselor. Find people that can give you advice along the way and mentor you and share wisdom with you, because it is something that's meant to last. So that's been our show. You've been watching Raw TV, and remember, as always,
Live
to
it
live
raw.
it raw.
Here's Jenny and Tyler.
I'm falling quickly. Won't you come help me up? Don't run away so fast when you have what I want. These walls were built from pain. The labor was in vain. I just wanna catch up, but you never slow down. If I try to keep up, I might fail you. Come dwell inside my heart, live in the deepest parts. But you might not like what you see in the deepest parts of me. The floor is spinning. Come straighten